Happy Monday, everybody. Yep, Monday again. My favorite day of the week. Spring practice is over. Had the spring game Saturday. A lot to talk about from that. We're going to start out with baseball. Touch on that. We'll move on to the spring football and whatever else y'all want to talk about. Kind of a similar scenario played out this weekend with baseball, same way it did in Tallahassee. Lose on Friday or lose game one, come back and take game two and game three. Clemson loses to Notre Dame Friday. They rebound and take the next two games, win their second consecutive ACC series. I remember Eric Bakich. We talked about it a couple of times already on here before. But Eric Bakich, twice after that Wake Forest series when Clemson got swept. But even though they got swept, it felt like they had kind of went toe-to-toe with Wake Forest, and that's a top 5 team. And Bakich said twice that weekend that he felt, his team he believed with every fiber of his being, is exactly what he said, that they were on the verge of turning it around. And when they did, he thought they were going to be a team to be reckoned with. And maybe that's exactly what we're seeing playing out, because they've beaten Coastal in they're in this stretch where they've beaten Coastal, they've beaten Georgia, taking 2 out of 3 from Florida State, who is kind of going through a transition season the way Clemson is, with a new head coach in Link Jarrett. But now they've taken 2 out of 3 from Notre Dame, who a team who was in Omaha last year. So it looks like they are getting things turned around, gotten some of the roles figured out for a lot of these pitchers now. Still looking for some consistency with one of those weekend rotation spots. Bakich said, I think it was yesterday, he told us in a perfect world, Caden Grice would probably be the Friday night starter. But seeing as he's hitting and pitching, they don't want to use him on the mound on Friday. They'd rather use him on Sunday. That way he gets a day off. He gets a day off after pitching and hitting instead of, not getting any time off if he goes on Friday. So sounds like Ethan Darden will get another crack at the Friday spot this weekend, and Gordon will stay at Saturday based on what we heard last night. But I know Darden's first start didn't go great Friday night, or his first ACC start. He had made some midweek starts, and he'd been pretty solid in that role. So maybe it was just a hiccup. Won't get any easier for him. Clemson goes to they host Georgia tomorrow, then they go to North Carolina State this weekend. And last I looked, North Carolina State was a top 10 RPI team, so that's going to be a good test. I can't say for sure if they're still in the top 10 or not. It was last I looked, but very good baseball team. Going to be a very challenging weekend, to say the very least. Get started tomorrow, though, at home. Finish up a home and home with Georgia. They beat the Bulldogs last week up there in Athens. See if they can do it again tomorrow night. Rocco Reed gets to start for Clemson. Now we'll move on to what everybody wants to talk about, the spring game. Depending on what your expectations were going in to this game, you were probably either very disappointed or pretty satisfied. It just depends on the person, depends on their expectations. I said last week I didn't think Clemson was going to go out and try to put 30 points on the board for each team and stuff. I thought they were missing too many guys, and you're never going to get anything more than a very vanilla game plan for spring games, and that's what we saw. But I did say that I thought they would try to sling the ball around a little bit, and they did do that. Both teams combined, I think we saw more than 60 pass attempts. So you get a little bit of an idea of what Garrett Riley's going to want to do when the season starts. Thing is, you were missing 3 offensive linemen, 3 starting offensive linemen, and you were missing 2 of your 3 starting wide receivers. The receiving corps was very thin Saturday, to say the least. You didn't have Bo Collins. You didn't have Adam Randall. Still no Stellato. Will Taylor's playing baseball. So you're left with a lot of guys that you're not going to see much during the season taking a lot of reps Saturday. So best news that could have come out of that thing, is it doesn't sound like anybody got seriously hurt in the game. I know Vic Burley got banged up a little bit, but he ended up coming back in there. I thought there were, a lot of positives come out. Still some things that they need to work on as they go through the summer and get ready to open fall camp later this year. I think Klubnik still holds on to the ball a little bit too long at times. I think he gets happy feet sometimes. And that can probably be attributed at least a little bit to the fact that quarterbacks aren't live. They're not getting hit. So when he starts getting hit, that might change a little bit. Still holds on to the ball a little bit too long. He had one play in particular comes to mind. He had Cole Turner wide open earlier in that game down the field. If he gets that ball out of there a little bit quicker, that's probably a touchdown. He also put a little bit too much air under it, allowed the DB to catch up to it, which leads me into my next point. The pass defense, which was such a weakness last year, I thought was really good Saturday, albeit against not the strongest wide receiver group. But I thought some of those safeties were playing with physicality. Khalil Barnes was just, wow. That kid looks ready to play now. Shelton Lewis was impressive, another freshman. But you got to like what you saw from Nate Wiggins and Toriano Pride. I felt those guys, they weren't the most consistent of players last season. And to me, they looked like that experience they gained last year. They kind of got thrown into the fire feet first, kind of had to learn on the job. I think that experience is going to pay off big time for those guys this year. Nate Wiggins, he has all the makings of being a lockdown corner. We'll see if he can live up to that billing, but I think he has all the makings to be one mentally, physically. He has all the characteristics, all the traits. I have high expectations for Nate Wiggins this year. So the pass defense I thought looked really much improved, and I never doubted that it would be. I think Mike Reed's one of the best cornerback coaches in the country. There is a reason Georgia has tried to hire him away from Clemson a couple of times in recent years. Most recently, the last time was here recently. There's a reason why Georgia wants him, because he is good at what he does. And I think Mickey Kahn's done a pretty good job with the safeties for the most part too. Andrew Makuba looks like he is ready to put last year behind him. He kind of looked like he's ready to return to freshman form. And I think Clemson, even without Will Shipley playing Saturday, I thought the running back, Clemson's got some depth at running back. Dominique Thomas looks really good. We're talking about a guy that walked on to the team, a former walk-on. And I thought Keith Adams showed why the staff was so high on him when they added him late to that 2022 class. So Clemson's got some backs that they can turn to if need be. To me, obviously the biggest question still are wide receivers. Just didn't do a whole lot in this game. But really, all you have was Antonio Williams and Brandon Spector and a freshman, Noble Johnson, who I was hoping was going to be a little further along than it looks like he is. Looks like he's probably still got some learning to do. Still high on that kid. I think his talent and potential is off the charts, but maybe he's one of those guys that needs a year. We'll see. Didn't do anything to really wow you during the spring game, but some guys just take a little longer than others. Got a couple freshmen that'll be here in the summer that maybe could help. Ronan Hannafin, let's not forget, he was a top 100 talent coming out of high school. And Tyler Brown, who I think was vastly underrated by the recruiting service. The guy can fly, so he's going to add some speed. But to me, the biggest things are getting Bo Collins and Adam Randall healthy. Those guys have got to get healthy. They've got to stay healthy. Clemson needs those guys on the field, period. It's just no other way to get around it. You got to have those guys on the field, and you need Beaux Collins to take that next step in his development. This is going to be his third season in the program. He needs to show why everybody was so high on him coming out of high school. I think Beaux Collins can be as good as Beaux Collins wants to be, and if he puts his mind to it and he can stay healthy, I think he's got a lot of potential. Biggest thing for him, he's just got to stay healthy. I think Adam Randall's another guy who's starting to get overlooked a little bit because we just haven't seen him. I mean, he tore his ACL last year. Never really gained any traction when he came back. Probably was never fully 100% last year. Also was dealing with a hand injury, if I'm not mistaken, after he came back. But and here he is. He's had to have a little minor procedure done on his other knee. But then you need those two guys healthy, man. Period. If you can keep those guys healthy, I kind of like the makeup of the wide receiver room. I think Klubner's got some weapons to work with, but it's like Dabo Swinney says, the best of, how's he say that thing? The best availability is being available or something like that. You got to have those guys available, period. But one of the other bigger things is just the defense overall. I thought they had a little bit of that swagger back that I thought was lacking at times last year. For years, if there was one thing you knew you were going to get from a Clemson defense, they were going to have that swagger, that look that's hard to describe. It's kind of like a confidence level. And, they play with a chip on their shoulder. And I didn't think we saw that Clemson defense last year. I thought I saw some glimpses of that. Yeah, there you go. The best ability is availability. That's what I was trying to think of. But I thought we saw some glimpses of that old Clemson mentality on the defensive side of the ball. And that was without guys like Rook Arroyo, Trey Williams, and Peyton Page. And, man, but those freshman defensive linemen, man, they hit on all four of those guys that are enrolled early. They were all four impressive. TJ Parker's going to be hard to keep off the field this year. He looks ready to roll right now. And obviously all the hype of Peter Woods has been legit. That guy was tossing around offensive linemen like rag dolls. He was living in the backfield. I thought there was a lot to like about what Harris Sewell did the other day, a true freshman offensive lineman. But, man, Peter Woods there was a couple of times he ate Sewell up. But it wasn't just Sewell. Don't get me wrong. Peter Woods was eating about everybody up who was in front of him Saturday. He is going to be really good. He is going to be a force to be reckoned with. Next thing I was going to touch on. The middle of the field was utilized. The tight ends were utilized over the middle of the field. We saw crossing routes. We saw a lot of things that we are used to seeing with this offense, like the inside zone. We've seen it for years. We're going to keep seeing it. But one thing we did see that we haven't seen a lot of in recent years, attacking the middle of the field. So crossing routes. Those are things we have not seen. And Garrett Riley, I think he showed the other day that he has every intention on taking advantage of that area between the hash marks that Clemson at times has forgotten was there, over the past 2-3 years, whatever it's been. Clemson has a tight end in Jake Brenningstool who is a matchup nightmare. There is no reason why you shouldn't be taking advantage of that out there in the middle of the field between the hashes, getting him on some linebackers, creating some mismatches. And that's one thing I love about this new scheme. It's going to create mismatches. So that was another very big bright spot for me, seeing some tight ends catching the ball over the middle of the field. How did the kickers look? I'll tell you what, there was one There was one kicker, and I don't even remember his name now because I had never. He must have walked on because I had never heard of him before Saturday. Man, he kicked a 51-yard field goal. His kickoffs are good, but Robert Gunn was good kicking off. I think Robert Gunn's got a very strong leg, but man, I wish I can't even remember his name off the top of my head right now. I hadn't been home this afternoon, so I didn't make any notes for this thing tonight. I wish I could remember his name. I have to look it up and I'll drop it in the comments later. But I'm going to tell you what, he was impressive. I actually thought it was Robert Gunn. That first 51-yard field goal, I thought it was Robert Gunn at first. I just assumed it was, but it wasn't. I mean, that kid's got a leg on him, man. I haven't heard anything about Barnes playing any wide receiver, so I might have to say probably not. I mean, maybe that depends on who can stay healthy and whatnot, but I haven't heard anything about Barnes taking any reps at wide receiver, so. But I'll just say what the coaches have said. Dabo said it, Lemansky Hall said it. He's going to play wherever they need him to play. So, and they have said multiple times that he could play inside or outside. But I think he is more suited to play inside than outside. But he can absolutely do both. Yeah, I don't know how that's going to play out. I have no idea. Usually the field goal kicker is going to be your kickoff guy too, so I would expect that would be the same thing this year. But no, we'll see how that competition plays out. That competition might be closer than most of us thought it was, because that kid's he's got a leg on him, man. Let me see if I can look up his name right quick, because I hate not knowing his name. Liam Boyd, that was his name. Liam Boyd. He's a redshirt freshman out of Asheville. Walked on to the Clemson team last summer. So, Liam Boyd, stick that name in the back of your mind, because he was pretty impressive, man. But I'm not saying he's going to beat out Robert Gunn or anything like that, because Robert Gunn's got a cannon for a leg. He's got a super strong leg. It'll probably just depend on how consistent he is and what he does once he gets in front of 80,000 people. It's hard to replicate that kind of atmosphere in practice. Back to Peter Woods for a minute. I don't know if Peter Woods is going to begin the season starting, but he's going to play, and I don't think it matters whether he starts or not. Assuming you can keep, Xavier Thomas says he's 100% healthy now. Assuming he stays healthy, I think him and Justin Mascoll are your starting defensive ends. It would not shock me at all to see Peter Woods lined up on the outside some. Wouldn't expect him to be a starting defensive end, though, barring injury or anything. I think Cade Denoff looks like he is finally ready to contribute. Not so sure about Zaire Patterson. We'll see about Greg Williams and where he is. He's been in the program for a while now. But end is one of the positions where Clemson isn't all that deep. There are two kids coming into summer, A.J. Hoffler and David Ojebi. And like Noble Johnson, all of you that have listened to me, run my mouth the past year, have heard me talk up Noble Johnson. Same thing with AJ Hoffler. I am extremely high on that kid. I wish he would have enrolled early, but not everybody can. But I think there are going to be opportunities for Hoffler and Ojebi to come in and earn some early opportunities. And I think Hoffler is a guy that is capable of coming in and earning the trust of the coaching staff in one fall camp and getting on the field early. I think he's that talented. He's out of Woodward in Atlanta. I thought he's another guy that was a little underrated by the services. But if you go watch his film, he's impressive. Yeah, will Clemson get middle line? Had to be a little bit more specific. I'm not sure what you're asking me there. If you're asking me about Sammy Brown, too soon to say, man. Too soon to say. I think it's way too early to call that one. I still think, this Clemson Georgia battle. He showed up at Clemson a couple times this spring, showed up at Georgia a couple times this spring. You follow those visits. He has visited Clemson and Georgia by far, more times than there's any of the other contenders. The number is 2. So they're always looking at linebackers. The number's 2. Sammy Brown is the guy at the top of the board, and Wade Woodaz, his younger brother, Drew Woodaz, who was here this weekend, he's the other top target. They're going to take 2 in this cycle, and right now those are the 2 top guys on the board, or probably the 2 more realistic options right now. They're not going to expand the board until probably at least after Sammy Brown decides, say if for some reason they missed on him. I don't think you're going to see the board expand at linebacker. They're going to wait on Sammy Brown and they're going to wait on Drew Woodaz. Those are 2 guys that they want. But if you're asking me if they're going to get Sammy Brown, I can't answer that yet. He is going to follow through and take all his officials. And from what he told me, I would expect a decision sometime after that, probably in July. I know July 1st comes a rule change where you can take unlimited officials. I don't think Sammy Brown's a guy that needs to take unlimited officials. I think he knows already which handful of schools he favors over the others. And I think you'll see him take those 5, and probably that'll be it. And then have a decision sometime after that, probably in July. Do I like their chances? Sure. It's a Clemson-Georgia battle. Kids from Georgia. I've had a couple of conversations with him. I asked him, did he grow up rooting for Georgia? Was he a Bulldogs fan growing up? And he said no. So he doesn't have an emotional tie to Georgia. I think if you look at Georgia's roster, they are loaded with 5-star linebackers. If you look at Clemson's roster, not so much. I think Dabo Swinney actually took a number from linebacker and added it to the defensive backs. So they're going to be one body shorter than they normally are from here on out, or one body shorter than they have been over the last several years. I want to say when Brent Venables got to Clemson, he ended up getting an extra linebacker. And now that he's gone, I think Clemson's taking that back and putting it back with the secondary. So you're going to have one less linebacker than we're accustomed to seeing. But there is a clearer path to the playing field at Clemson for Sammy Brown. But I also don't think, he's not a guy that is scared of competition. A roster full of 5 stars linebackers not going to scare him off. If Clemson wins out on him, it's going to be because of the culture and the family life feel inside the building and all that stuff you hear recruits talk about all the time. The conversations that I've had with him, it always comes back to that every time when he's talking about Clemson. It is the culture. And he is big on culture. And he likes the culture at Georgia too. Not to say it's the same as Clemson's there, and it's not. There's two different cultures, and he likes them both. Now, whether that gives one a head up on the other one, I don't know yet. There are a lot of people who think Clemson leads for Sammy Brown. There are some that think Georgia leads for Sammy Brown. As somebody who has had multiple conversations with Sammy Brown, I think he does a very good job of not letting on who he's favoring. So, like this right here. So guys like Steve Wiltfong or anybody else that covers recruiting, you're gonna have to go by what they're hearing from other sources, not from the player himself or from family members. And there's just no way to know which way he's leaning right now. And I would say 50-50. That's the number I'd put on it. Fried okra or collards? Neither. You know I'm a picky eater. Krispy Kreme over Dunkin'. Clemson's already got one corner committed in this class, Tavoy Fegan. He jumped on board months ago. One more corner to go. There's the numbers 2. Corian Gibson's probably the top guy right now. He made 2 spring visits. He was here for the spring game. He was a guy I said I thought there was a possibility Clemson might be able to put the finishing touches on his recruitment this weekend. Not sure that happened. But he does know that there is only one spot left. It's going to be a first come, first serve type deal. They've got offers out to, other guys like Ashton Hampton. So, I mean, it's not like he's the only guy they're after. And it's not like he's the only guy they like. So he does have an official schedule with Clemson, but I'm still not convinced his recruitment makes it till June. We'll see. So 2 corners this cycle. One of them's Tavoy Fegan. He's already committed. And right now, Corian Gibson's another name to know. Don't discount Texas and Gibson's recruitment either. I'm not saying Clemson's the favorite and go kind of land him by any stretch. I think Texas is still a player in this thing. That's one of the other schools that he's got an official schedule too. So yeah, I don't do the fried okra or collards, man. And my mama used to kill me for not eating collards. That New Year's Day tradition and everything. But Krispy Kreme all day long. I don't think I've ever even eaten a Dunkin' Donut, to be honest with you. That is how much I favor Krispy Kreme. Yeah, Peter Woods is going to be very good. He's a special kind of talent. And, I think it's funny that one of the things he got dinged for there late in the cycle that knocked him from 5-star status with 4-star status was because he supposedly has short arms. Here he is blocking a kick in the spring game with those short arms. If Peter Woods isn't a 5-star prospect, I don't know who is. Vocal leaders on defense. Rook is a guy who is very charismatic. He is very personable. He is a character. He's a guy I could see being one of the leaders on that defense. I think I think Tyler Davis is another obvious leader on the defense, even though he's not talkative the way Rook is, but I think he is one of the I think he is I think he's more talkative around the players than he is with, say, the media or whatever. But I think Tyler Davis is one of those guys. I think Jeremiah Trotter will probably be one of your leaders on the defense this year. And obviously you want your middle linebacker or your Mike or whatever you want to call him. He's the quarterback of the defense. You probably want him to be one of the vocal leaders of the defense, and I can see him growing into that kind of role this year. All right. We also, I get that line of thinking, but you got to remember Clemson was missing 3 starting offensive linemen in that game. A lot of times he was lined up against a freshman offensive lineman in Harris Sewell, and other times he was matched up against Tristan Lee, who has played very little. So you got to take it and look at who he was lined up against. That's not taking anything away from him, but I wouldn't ding the offensive line too much considering 3/5 of the starters did not play. Come talk to me in December. They thought that last year when the spring game happened last year, I think Clemson had 1 player committed in the 2023 class, Nathaniel Joseph, and he ended up decommitting. He wasn't even a member of the class. South Carolina, they spent some time ranked higher than Clemson in the recruiting rankings in 2023, probably in 2022, probably in 2021. We'll see who's on top in December, in January. I'll tell you what I think is funny. The fact that Clemson announced a crowd of 50,000 for their spring game, so South Carolina had to turn around and announce a crowd of 51,000 Saturday night. And, if you can't read between the lines and see what was going on there. But I thought that was a little funny, but, little fun with the rivalry there. But, there's always each recruit, I get it. They got all 3 of those offensive linemen. 2 of those guys grew up rooting for South Carolina. Those are battles Clemson's probably not going to win. Period. When you grow up rooting, if you grow up rooting for Clemson, can you ever see yourself going and playing for South Carolina? It's the same way when a kid grows up rooting for South Carolina. The side of the state that I live on, and this is just my perception, but I'm almost 50 years old, and I have always felt vastly outnumbered. I have always thought that South Carolina fans vastly outnumbered Clemson fans in this area and on this side of the state. Josiah Thompson comes out of Dillon. He's one of those offensive linemen. It's been a pipeline for South Carolina. The Power 5 talent that has come out of Dillon, they go to South Carolina. I never thought Clemson had a very good shot at signing Cam Pringle or landing Cam Pringle. And a couple of conversations I had with him, he strikes me as a guy that's on the 3-year plan. If you're going to be on the 3-year plan, you need to get on the field as early as possible. There is a clearer path to the field at South Carolina than there is at Clemson when it comes to offensive linemen. Now, Blake Franks is a guy you got beat for, period. That's a guy from Greenville. That is a guy that was considered a lock to Clemson last December. And South Carolina comes and pulls the wool out from under you and takes him. That's a guy you got beat for. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. But I don't think you can just say that with all three of those guys. Mazeo Bennett, another in-state guy that South Carolina got, Clemson never even offered. Kelvin Hunter, in-state guy from right here in Florence, Clemson never offered. So, I mean, there's always context matters in every one of these recruitments, man. Each one is its own unique little story, and the reason why you miss on one might not be the reason why you miss on this one. But with these in-state guys, a lot of it has to do who they grew up rooting for, who their parents grew up rooting for, who those loyalties lie with. Because you grew up rooting for one and hating the other. You're not going to go to the one, chances are you're not going to go play for the school you grew up hating. I know I could never see myself going and playing for the school that I grew up despising. That's just me. Yes, Dylan has pumped some players through South Carolina. Make no mistake. I'd have to go back and find all. Can't remember them off the top of my head. It's not like they have Power 5 talent coming out of there every single season, but the ones that have come out of there tend to go to South Carolina. And I go ahead and prepare you. It's kind of the same thing with Lake City. They got a big-time guy there. He's a defensive tackle. He's going to be the top player in this state in 2025, Mari Adams. I would absolutely call South Carolina the front runner for him right now. So, I ain't touching that. I think we know which school's got the better engineer. Oh, come on, man. Krispy Kreme's pretty good now. I guess I'm going to have to go out and try Dunkin' now. Because I got to admit, you've never steered me wrong on food yet. So, Zach has never steered me wrong on food to this day. Now, if I had to pick between collards and fried okra, I'm going with the fried okra. But I've never eaten either one of them. Probably. I think Lee's probably your left tackle. If not, he's going to be at right tackle, and Blake Miller will be over there. But probably Lee gets the first crack at it if I had to guess, yeah. Next to drop. What we talking about? Next what to drop? I hope nothing drops right now. Next to drop. No, Zach is no Mark Ryan. Promised myself I wasn't going to talk about that. Next commit to drop. Within the next 7 days. And with that, okay, I'll take this last one. Yes, the roster is still at 88. You have to be at 85 by the start of fall camp. So, it's not something you have to worry about right now. The transfer, the portal window just opened. We'll see if anybody decides to transfer after Dabo has his post-spring meetings with every player. They sit down and talk, and we'll see what comes of those. Clemson has to be at 85 by the start of fall camp. Push come to shove, there are 3 former walk-ons with scholarships right now. If nobody transfers, I guess they'd have to take the scholarships from those former walk-ons to get to 85. So that is what would have to happen if nobody transferred. But I'm guessing you're going to at least see one or two transfers before the beginning of fall camp. That we'll see how it plays out, but it wouldn't shock me to see one or two. No names, Russell. No names. Within a week, Clemson will have another commitment. And with that, I'll bid y'all adieu. See y'all next Monday. AllClemsonTigers.com. We got you covered from the spring game. Had a conversation with William Satterwhite yesterday. Offensive lineman just picked up an offer last week. I'm going to write that up tonight. Be looking for that. Still got a bunch more coverage from the spring game. AllClemsonTigers.com. See y'all next Monday, man. Appreciate y'all tuning in.